Hello everyone, welcome to 1010 News. We will tell you the top 10 news in 10 minutes. And sorry for a brief pause as we are working to expand our views. This is Esther Park.
And I'm Andy Hong. Yeah, we had a lot going on.
Yep.
And we're now back in business. 4 months ago, Malaysian Air Flight 370 disappeared over the South Pacific without a trace. And last week, Malaysian Air Flight 17 went down over the Russo-Ukrainian border with all the traces of an anti-air missile shot. Most agree by now that the Boeing 777 with 298 souls on board, most of whom were Dutch and Australian, was shot down by a Soviet-era Buk anti-aircraft missile launcher. Of course, the usual finger-pointing game started when the Kiev government, led by President Poroshenko, blamed the eastern Ukrainian separatists, while the separatists, of course, aligned with Russian President Vladimir Putin, blamed Kiev. That is, until Ukrainian officials intercepted a phone call by the separatist militants in which, according to CNN, the rebels were heard saying, "We have just shot down a plane." A plane, of course, referring to the Boeing 777. Well, that made things a lot clearer for the investigators, but now the separatists are refusing to allow international monitors to closely observe the wreckage, and we're seen tampering with the debris, much to the dismay of the people who have lost loved ones in the deadly attack. However, aviation experts and world leaders alike are also pointing out that MH17 should never really have flown into the airspace, as it is considered officially a war zone. Now, if you look at a map, every plane is basically deviating around the war zone, which is a good sign. It is good that the investigators were also able to locate one of the two flight data recorders, which can prove to be crucial to figuring out what happened in the last moments of the flight.
Yeah, and I agree, the tensions in Ukraine should definitely settle down.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, it seems like the airplane clashes never seem to end. French officials have dispatched a military unit to secure the site in Mali where an Air Algeria crashed in a rainstorm with 116 passengers. President Francois Hollande, is that right?
Francois
Hollande, said that the wreckage had been clearly identified despite the disintegration of the aircraft. The MD-38 disappeared from the radar less than an hour after it took off on Thursday from Burkina Faso's capital. Officials said that the wreckage was found 30 kilometers from the capital. This crash was the third airline crash this week.
Yes, the third. The second one being the Taiwanese aircraft crash. There have been a lot of aircraft crashes, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
And in the Middle East, there's also tensions continuing. But due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, many have forgotten the one involving the Islamic states of Iraq and Syria, commonly known as ISIS, although it now calls itself the Islamic States, the IS. The Muslim extremists, based on the border between Syria and Iraq, as the name suggests, have taken over much of the contested areas near the border, including the key city of Mosul. At Mosul, ISIS began to first go after the Christians living there by forcing them to choose from one of three fates. 1. Convert to Islam. 2. Pay extra taxes to the Sharia courts, which are basically courts for Islamic law. Or 3. Face death. Today, a video that surfaced allegedly showing ISIS blowing up the revered holy site, Jonah's tomb. The conflict is escalating beyond hope of a diplomatic solution as 2,400 Iraqis died in the violence in June alone, with 1,500 being innocent civilians.
And also, not only that, there is also the commonly known chaos in the war in the Gaza Strip. A network of Palestinian militants have dug a tunnel from Gaza to Israel, which is taking the center stage in the war between Hamas and Israel. Gaza's Hamas rulers view them as military game changer in its conflict, while Israel sees them as a threat to destroying the sophisticated underground network. The Gaza has two tunnels, one reaching Egypt and those reaching Israel. The underground passages to Egypt are meant to bypass a blockade on Gaza that was tightened by Israel and Egypt. Through these tunnels, the Gaza militants receive illegal military weapons. Egypt has tried to destroy all of the tunnels, which gave the Hamas a severe financial crisis before. Furthermore, the senior Hamas militants say that it was a better way to expand their connections and develop a better system to trade with others. And another important news regarding the conflict in the Middle East is that an Israeli soldier is captured. The soldier, Surgeon Orashal, was concluded that he was missing. There's no hard evidence of exactly what his condition is, but the search is continuing. Capturing an Israeli soldier, even withholding a soldier remains, can have a powerful impact on the Israel society. Hamas has recognized the severity of such incidents that they have clearly has moved to grab the hostages. The Israel military stated that they had seen soldiers in the tunnels carrying plastic handcuffs and tranquilizers. This conflict is becoming one of the deadliest engagement for the Israel forces since their ground incursion into Gaza began last Thursday. And also, more recently, Israel and Hamas have agreed to have a 12-hour ceasefire starting Saturday, halting more than 2 weeks of bloodshed that has claimed more than 800 lives of civilians. Earlier, the Israel cabinet first rejected the proposed 1 week that was proposed by the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, but there was no final conclusion. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Secretary of State John Kerry that Israel would agree to the truce, and Palestinian member is also agreeing to this. I hope that the confrontation in Gaza will soon, settle
I think
down.
the biggest tragedy in this is the boys that were killed in the beginning of the conflict. I mean, they didn't do anything, but they were still killed in cold blood.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the island of Giglio off the coast of Italy, the stricken ocean cruise liner Costa Concordia was finally pried off the rocks and towed away 2 days ago. The ship capsized in January of 2012 when the captain recklessly steered the ship dangerously close to the rocky shore and thus claimed the lives of 32 passengers. Before the accident, the island was just a small, obscure tourist spot with only a few visitors per year. However, as the wreck brought 600 additional foreign workers on the island of 900 residents, local businesses and the residents changed their lifestyles to cater to the suddenly international population. In the end, although many were glad that the ship is now gone, many were also saddened because, according to CNN's interviews with the locals, they found the encounters with the foreigners rewarding and enriching.
I see.
That's true. You always need a bit of exposure.
Yeah, of course. And also, the lawmakers are deadlocked on a plan to deal with the surge in migrant children who are filling the detention centers along the Mexican border, with both Democrats and Republicans saying Tuesday that it was most unlikely they could reach an agreement before Congress leaves town for a 5-week recess at the end of the month. The Democrats' plan, which they introduced on Wednesday, calls for roughly a $2.7 billion to stem the crisis. The Republicans in the Senate rejected this plan, saying that it was too out of their hands. Already, the debate is morphing into something far larger than just a dispute over funding and immigration laws. Governor Rick Perry has summoned 1,000 National Guard troops to the border, and this action is largely a symbolic one, but Texas National Guard states that his troops had no plans to detain anyone who crossed illegally from Mexico.
Well, most of them come from Honduras and Guatemala.
Yes.
I mean, they're suffering from gang violence. Many have received death threats when they were sent back. So we need to find a solution quickly. In the Midwestern United States, however, a man named Richard Plotz walked into the psychiatric unit of a Philadelphia hospital with a caseworker named Teresa Hunt, wherein an argument ensued with psychiatrist Lee Silverman. When shots were fired, one of which grazed Silverman's head and another fatally wounded Hunt, another doctor and caseworker charged and wrestled Plotz to the floor until authorities arrived. And it turns out that another bullet fired by Silverman wounded Plotz and bought time for others to take him down. Again, this incident was a testament to the problems of firearms and firearm control in the United States.
Yeah, I agree. I think that U.S. should imply more laws according to firearms.
That's true, but it's still an ongoing debate. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, of course. And also, Joko Widodo, the governor of Jakarta, was declared the winner of Indonesia's presidential election on Tuesday. This was a remarkable event because he rose to the leader of the world's 4th most populous nation from being just a child of the slums. However, not everyone seemed to celebrate his power. His opponent, a retired general, rejected the result as fraudulent and said that he was withdrawing from the race. Mr. Joko will lead a country that has successfully consolidated its democracy and enjoyed a strong economic growth under the departing president, Cecilio Bambarg Yudhoyono. As the elections are coming to an end, the general, Mr. Prabowo, is considering whether to appeal to a court because he believes that Mr. Joko has no experience in leading a large nation.
Well, Barack Obama, if you see about that, he was also just a lawyer before that and a senator. I mean, I guess he had a little bit of experience, but many people criticized him for not having much experience. And he still has done a lot for the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see about that.
Yeah.
And for our science news, you've probably seen the grainy pixelated pictures of Pluto on Wikipedia. But in exactly 353 days, we'll be having the first high-definition images of the dwarf planet as it was recently reclassified. The New Horizons satellite will have the closest flyby of Pluto yet when it passes by the KBO or Kuiper Belt object and its moons. As of yesterday, the satellite, which had one of the highest launch velocities of any rocket ever launched, was 2.82 astronomical units away from its destination, or 2.82 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun.
That's great. There's a lot of advancement in science these days.
Yeah.
And also, this day in history, Louise Joy Brown, the world's first test tube baby to be conceived via in vitro fertilization, is born at a general hospital in Manchester, England, to parents Leslie and Peter Brown. The healthy baby weighed in at 5 pounds 12 ounces. Before going to birth to Louise, Leslie suffered infertility. However, the doctors were able to do an experimental IVF procedure. Later, the Browns had a second daughter, also through IVF. Today, IVF is considered a mainstream medical treatment for infertility. Hundreds of children around the world have been conceived through this procedure. And that's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This is Esther Park.
And I'm Andy Hong. Congrats to the German national soccer team for winning the World Cup. That was last Sunday, was it? Feels like 500 years ago.
I know.
Deutsche Fußballbund is the Weltmeister. All right. Thanks for watching.